this last clip I've entitled Earthquake, and I kind of talk a lot about the past and those kind of things, and this is what I call a live um, issue. Um, um, and it may, if I am picking this up, I call it prophetic breadcrumbs. The Lord gives me a dream and a vision, and sometimes it spans years, and this particular one has spanned almost 30 years. And so I'll just talk about when I was back in 84, 85. I worked for Hugo and Dorothy Eck, and Hugo had some rental properties and stuff, and I was a manager. And I got to know Hugo pretty well, and he's a really great guy. And I ended up, resigning as I was moving on, and I was contemplating Hugo and his properties and his legacy, and how much he was passionate about his properties and caring for them and so on. And I remember one night I was just thinking about that, and that night I had a dream, and in the dream I was standing out in front of 908 Alderson, and I saw a man standing there, and the front half of the building had fallen off, and I knew, in the dream, this is the results of an earthquake, and I looked over at the man, and I saw that it was actually myself. Years, the man was balding and heavy set, and I was just appalled that it was me. I remember that at the time thinking, oh, well, I will never get heavy set. Well, I didn't avoid that, but whatever. Anyway, and that was the first dream, and it did a couple of things for me. Number one, I didn't feel like that this is earthquake area. I grew up in tornado area, for instance, and I'm not interested in going through an earthquake. And so it kind of felt like, oh, there's going to be a time period where there's not going to really be an earthquake or nothing that devastating. But there would come a day when there was one that would be very devastating. And I won't go through all of it, but over the years I've had different visions and dreams and stuff. And when we moved back to Bozeman this time, uh, one of the things the Lord tapped to me and said, "This is the season of that earthquake," and then the dreams of this has picked up, and so when I was in the detention center, there was a pastor, Rusty Strickler, um, was sharing about how they were revamping this steeple to his church, and he just said, "Pray for it. We've had a rough time getting funding, so on." And I went into prayer that night about it, and had a vision, and I saw him breaking the steeple up into pieces and having people like do the concrete and then do this piece and this piece through donations and stuff, and that he opened it up to the community, not just the church. And I saw him with a pink flyer going around handing out the flyer about the church and stuff and the funding and stuff. And then at the end, the steeple was built and it was just beautiful. And then the earthquake hit, and the dream stopped. And so the next time I saw him, I told him the dream. I said, "Here's," and he said, "Well, that's actually what we've decided to do." They had already decided to break it up into pieces, and that actually did work, and they got it funded. And I believe they've either completed or almost completed the steeple. And I told him, I said, "Well, I over the years I had dreams and visions of an earthquake happening here," and he confirmed. He says, "Yeah, we've had a lot of people report that kind of stuff, and so it's not really a matter of if, we all feel like it's when." And then I said, "Well, by the vision I had, my belief of what that meant was that your church will play a particular part of play in that in the earthquake event." And he said, "Well, that's interesting because we're designated as a kind of ground central for emergency services and stuff, that they'll be able to come in and use our church in the event of a quake and stuff. No, that's interesting. And then over the months and stuff, I'd had some more stuff. I won't drag it all out, but then I mentioned to Rusty about it. And one of the things that came out is kind of similar to the 9/11 thing, where the Lord said, well, I want you to go to this church, and I want you to, there's more stuff I want to tell you. And I got that on Rusty's church, and I told him about it. And it rang true to him, and he invited me. He said, yeah, please come over, and let's just see what God says, see if anything comes out of it. And I've asked repeatedly that I be allowed to go to his church for prayer, in a two-way street. He offered prayer for me, and whatnot. And I'd like to put in a final request. I understand if it's denied, but I have to ask. So anyway,